Assalamu alaikum. The essay topic that I've chosen to discuss today is one that is very central to human beings, and that is of friendship. If you remember for what we've been discussing about Bacon's essayistic style, he has a number of areas in which he has discussed topics that are of common interest and topics that are of what you would call almost universal interest. And I'm sure that the area and the essay that we've selected for today is going to be very interesting for you, because Bacon has this very unique style of exposing a subject, of discussing different aspects and making you think in a very different way of something that is as commonplace, as ordinary as friendship. So let's see what he has for us today and the different ways in which he exposes and then argues on the topic of friendship. Now, he starts in a very direct way, and by now you've had quite a few essays of Bacon, and you know that Bacon does not go into preambles. He doesn't have an introduction as such. He goes directly into the subject matter and launches off from there. So for him, the beginning of an essay is like the launching pad of a rocket. He takes off at speed, and then you find out that he is discovering entire universes for his readers. So he says, "It had been hard for him that spake it to have put more truth and untruth together in few words than in that speech." And then he comes to whatever the speech topic is going to be. "Whatsoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god." So this is the central thesis of his essay. You remember when we were doing different styles of essay writing, we discussed the very important sentence which launches off the essay topic. Here, this is the thesis statement, and like so many of Bacon's statements, this is one which is quoted very frequently. "Whatsoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god." Now, how Bacon explains this topic is what we're going to be doing in the rest of the essay. So according to him, any human being or any creature, because he doesn't say whoever, he says whatsoever. Obviously you know that he's talking about human beings, but because he uses these two very different categories, he cannot, grammatically speaking, say whoever, whosoever. So he says, "Whatsoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god." The wild beast and the god, now they're both categories that human beings do not ordinarily fall into. And that is why he uses the word whatsoever and not whosoever, because when he says whosoever, then you know that he is restricting the population or the target to human beings. But here he's bringing in wild beasts, a creature that is lower than humans, and then gods. So he's talking about two different beings, one lesser than human and the other greater than human. So he talks about friendship, and he says that you have to be either a beast, either an animal or a god in order to be able to live on your own and not want company. All right? Okay, for it is most true that a natural and secret hatred and aversation towards society in any man had somewhat of the savage beast. Wild beasts, you know, live in the jungles. They do not live in houses, they don't live in communities. Once an animal lives in a community, it is not wild anymore. It is tamed, it is domesticated. So Bacon says that any human being who does not want to have the company of other human beings has to be a savage beast. It's only a wild animal, a savage beast, that will go and live in the jungle. A tamed, domesticated animal will always want to be in the company of human beings. What you also see in this slide is use of a word that you may not be able to find, let's say, in a pocket dictionary, and that is the word aversation. And in parenthesis, I've given you the meaning for it. It is an archaic use of the word aversion. That is something you do not like to be in the company of. So if you have an aversion or an aversation towards society, it means you hate human beings. And when you hate human beings, you will not want to live with human beings. That is what Bacon is trying to say. It is the most untrue. So he gives two sides of a statement, two sides of a question. He doesn't just give you one side and say, this applies to everyone. So the second side is, it is most untrue that it should have any character at all of the divine nature, except it proceed not out of a pleasure in solitude, but out of a love and desire to sequester a man's self for a higher conversation. And here he gives you a different idea. And the idea is that a human being cannot be a god. A human being cannot have godly characteristics or godly features unless the human being is alone or solitary, not because he loves solitude, but because he has set out for himself a task that is noble in nature. So not the kind of work that ordinary human beings are doing, not the kind of work that you and I are doing, but work that is nobler, work that has a divine nature. So only those human beings can be godly. And you remember, he gives you two kinds of creatures who do not like to be in the company of other human beings. One is a wild beast, the other is a god. So he's already given you an explanation of what a wild beast is. Now he comes to God, and he says that a human being can be a god only if whatever he wants to do alone has a divine purpose, has a noble purpose. It's not something routine. It's not that he considers himself above and beyond human beings, that he does not mix with human beings. It is because he has a higher purpose. There is a plan in his mind that he wants to implement. So a higher conversation, a higher plan, a more noble cause, such as is found to have been falsely and feignedly in some of the heathen. And now Bacon goes off to show to us how learned he is, and he gives examples of characters from history, from Roman history, and he says that some of the heathens that he presents as examples are Epimenides the Candian, Numa the Roman, Empedocles the Sicilian, and please don't be put off by all these big names. I'm going to explain to you who each one was and what he is known for. So Empedocles the Sicilian and Apollonius of Tyana, and truly and really endeavors of the ancient hermits and holy fathers of the church. Now in this short clause, Bacon has given you so many different ideas that it's very difficult for an ordinary human being to be able to do this kind of a thing. It needs very special qualification, and you know Francis Bacon by now, and you know that he is fully capable of, as they say, condensing a sea into a cup. And the ideas that he presents are so varied in nature, they are so diverse in nature, that when he condenses them and when he puts them together, you think that nobody could have done a better work. So he gives you some names out of history here, and let me explain to you each one of them. He talks about Epimenides the Candian, Numa the Roman, Empedocles the Sicilian, and Apollonius of Tyana. All right, let's see what explanation we have for each one of these. Epimenides was a Cretan who made one immortal statement. Now he was from Crete himself, and what he said was, all Cretans are liars. And this is a statement that has very often been dissected to see where the truth is. He was a Cretan and he says all Cretans are liars. So when he says all Cretans are liars, that means all Cretans are honest, truthful. Or if you take this statement to be true, then it means that he was telling a lie when he said all Cretans are liars, and therefore he is truthful, and therefore all Cretans are truthful. A little confusing, and the kind of statement that you need to pause and think about, but a wonderful statement in the sense that he himself was from Crete and he says all Cretans are liars. All right? So that's the first reference, Epimenides. The second reference is to Numa Pompilius. Now, a kind of a tongue twister. Try saying this word to yourself. You can see it up on the screen. Numa Pompilius. See, even after so many years, I can stumble on this word. So it's all right if you can't pronounce it the first time round. So Numa Pompilius was the legendary second king of Rome, and he succeeded Romulus. And when you have the time and the opportunity, read up the story of the establishment of the kingdom of Rome, and you will see you will read the story of Remus and Romulus, who are sometimes referred to as two wolves, and at other times in mythology they are supposed to have been raised by wolves. So don't forget to read up on the story of Remus and Romulus. So Numa Pompilius, Numa Pompilius, see how you stumble. Numa Pompilius was the second king of Rome, and he succeeded Romulus. So as such, he is a very important figure in history, and his is the second name that Bacon mentions when he talks about heathens. And remember, Bacon is talking from a very Christian point of view. So when he talks about heathens, he brings in Romans, he brings in people from Asia Minor, and anyone who was an important figure in history but who was not a Christian. Bacon refers to him as a heathen. So two heathens is mentioned here. The third one is Empedocles. And for Empedocles, the reference is Agrigento was in his time a rich city containing the finest Greek culture. So Empedocles is Greek, and Greeks, because they were not converted to Christianity or because they lived in a time before Christ, are known in Baconian terms as heathens. Apollonius of Tyana, again, was a Greek philosopher from the town of Tyana, and that is why he's called Apollonius of Tyana. He belonged to the province of Cappadocia in Asia Minor, which these days is Turkey. So everywhere that you read about Asia Minor, you know that the area that is being discussed is in contemporary references the portion that is known as Turkey. So these four people, Bacon says, and let's go back to the slide where he talks about heathens. These four people, he says, are people who have made claims of greatness. So he doesn't believe that these people deserved the status of Godhead, but because these are people who were either learned or very powerful, so the people of their age raised or elevated these individuals to the status of Godhead. But because these are, in Bacon's ideas, heathen individuals, therefore he does not recognize their greatness at all. And instead, he moves on to another category of human beings whom he really considers great. And who falls into that category, he tells you at the end of this slide, and that is ancient hermits and holy fathers of the church. So two kinds of people only, according to Bacon, who deserve the elevation to Godhead. Ancient hermits, people in antiquity, individuals in ancient times who left the world and all its creature comforts to go and live either in a cave or at the top of a mountain. So there are only two kinds of people that Bacon says fall into this category. One is the ancient hermits, the people who, regardless of their religion, regardless of their faith or belief, forsook this world to go and meditate. They could go and sit on top of a mountain, they could go and live in a cave, they could go and live in a jungle and live with the wild animals. That's one category. The other category is the holy fathers of the church, learned men, men who are Christian by faith and who have reserved their lives for service to the church. So in the category of holy fathers, you would find the nuns and the priests. Not the nuns so much, because remember, Bacon is talking only about men. He's not talking about the women. All his essays are geared towards establishing one stereotype, and that is, it's a man's world. And if it's a man's world, Bacon is going to be writing about men. So he's talking about those priests who cut themselves off from family, from friends, because they want to spend their whole lives in the service of the church. So not those heathens, not the Epimenides, Numa, Empedocles and Apollonius, but it is these holy fathers, these learned men of the church, or the ancient hermits who fall into the category of Godhead. He discusses a different aspect, a different facet of friendship. And he says, little do men perceive what solitude is and how far it extendeth. Now, if you remember from what I discussed in the earlier lectures, wherever Bacon uses the ETH ending, it actually stands for an S sound. So he says extendeth, but when you rewrite this or transcribe it in contemporary English, it becomes extends, E-X-T-E-N-D-S. So the ETH, extendeth, is a slightly archaic form of the letter S. So you don't realize how far this solitude can extend. For, and again, this is a very, very important statement. This is one of those very frequently quoted statements. A crowd is not company, and faces are but a gallery of pictures, and talk but a tinkling cymbal, where there is no love. Very important statement, and something that you need to remember, and something that I know a lot of you would like to quote later on. For a crowd is not company. Faces are but a gallery of pictures. Talk but a tinkling cymbal. And you know what a cymbal is? Anyone interested in music? Yes. It is it is a percussion musical instrument, and percussion music instrument are those that have to be hit with another instrument in order to produce a sound. All kinds of drums, for example, are percussion instruments. A cymbal has to be hit. A cymbal is made of metal, and that is why Bacon refers to a tinkling cymbal. That's the sound that a cymbal makes. So a crowd is not company. You might be surrounded by 100 people and yet say, I feel so alone, because those 100 people do not provide you with company. Those 100 people have their different ideas. They are not there to give you company, to give you support, to communicate with you. They are there for other reasons, for their own purposes. So a crowd is not company, and if a crowd is not company, then faces are but a gallery of pictures. Human beings have faces. Philosophers have said that the face is the index of the mind. And you have many other sayings, many other quotes on face. What Bacon here says is, a human face is like a picture. If there is no love, you identify certain faces with certain events, certain emotions, certain thoughts and ideas. But according to Bacon, if there's no love, then faces are but a gallery of pictures. Like you go to an art gallery and you see all those paintings there, and you say, oh, they're lifeless paintings. So unless there is love, a face is a non-living object. It's just like a painting hanging in a gallery. It's there to be appreciated. It doesn't mean anything. Talk but a tinkling cymbal. Talk is supposed to be more than that. I am speaking. I am delivering a lecture. My lecture should mean something to you. It shouldn't just be a sound in the background. What I'm saying is important. What I'm saying is for you. You should understand it. You should try to see how you can put it to good use. Otherwise, my talk is like a tinkling cymbal. All right? I hope you've understood this point. A crowd is not company. Faces are but a gallery of pictures. And talk but a tinkling cymbal where there is no love. So where there is no feeling, no emotion, there is no life. And then, because he's not satisfied with what he is expressing in English, he moves on to Latin. And he says, the Latin adage meeteth with it a little. Latin, according to Bacon, is a more expressive language, has a greater variety, a greater diversity of words and phrases. And the phrase that he borrows from Latin is magna civitas, magna solitudo. A great city is a great solitude. So don't think that you're going to feel comfortable in the city. It is when you're surrounded by many people that you feel most alone. It's not when you're sitting on your own in the lab or in your room or out in the wilds, let's say out climbing, hiking. It's not there that you feel alone, because there you have the company of nature. But it is when you are surrounded by human beings who do not understand you, surrounded by human beings who don't want to have anything to do with you, that is when you feel most alone. So a great city is a great solitude. Those of you who are planning to shift from the village or the countryside or the small cities into the big cities, and you think that there is a greater measure of safety, a greater kind of company, get that out of your head. A great city is a great solitude, nothing else. Because in a great town, friends are scattered. In a small community, everyone lives together. In the village, if the village is not spread out, everyone knows everyone, everyone can communicate with everyone, and everyone knows what everyone else's problems are, so that there is not that fellowship which is in less neighborhoods. So what he means by less neighborhoods is small communities. Those of you who think that you'll forget this, go ahead and write in front of this and make it small communities, small towns, villages, countryside, whatever name you want to give it, that is not as thickly populated as a city. So in Latin, when it is said that a great city is a great solitude, that's very true, because you find out that it is in big cities that you feel most lonely. In the small places, you always have companionship. Someone is always willing to give you a shoulder to cry on. Someone is always there to offer you advice. But in a great big city, no one thinks of what anyone else is doing. Let me give you an example. Islamabad is not a big city, but Islamabad is made up of people coming from diverse backgrounds. And there is no community feeling. Those of you who are sitting in a big city like Karachi, let's say, very thickly populated, lots of people, people running here and there, people rushing to work, people rushing to school, you go to hospitals, there's a crowd of people there, but that does not mean that those people become your friends. You're still alone. Friendship demands something more than this, and what it demands, Bacon is going to explain to us in a little while. So as far as cities are concerned, please do not think that you're going to find friendship in a city, because that is just not happening. In a small neighborhood, in a village or a small town, there's a greater chances of your finding companionship than in one of the big cities. But we may go further and affirm most truly that it is a mere and miserable solitude to want true friends, without which the world is but a wilderness. Think about this. Without true friends, the world is a wilderness. The world is like a jungle. The world is like a forest. It is only when you have friends that this world becomes worth living for. This world becomes worth dying for. So, the only person who qualifies for a true friend is one who knows the value of friendship. And even in this sense also of solitude, whosoever in the frame of his nature and affections is unfit for friendship, he taketh it of the beast and not from humanity. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard the quotation, man is a social animal. In some of these human beings, the social is stronger than the animal. In the others, and Bacon is talking about a great majority, in the others, the animal is stronger than the social. So, if you say that you love solitude, you're not fit to be a friend, and you are not human if you do not want friends, or if you cannot prove to be a good friend. And Bacon uses very harsh words here, very harsh language, when he says that he taketh it from the beast. He takes it from the animal point of the definition, not from the social point of the definition. So, not from humanity, but from the beast. So what he's trying to say is that if a human being says he doesn't like friends, or he says he doesn't want to live with human beings, he does not take it out of humanity. It's the beastliness in his nature that has overcome the humanity in his nature. A principal fruit of friendship is the ease and discharge of the fullness and swellings of the heart, which passions of all kinds do cause and induce. All right. Now what Bacon is trying to say here is that one of the advantages of friendship is that it allows you to have a catharsis. It allows you to share feelings and emotions. As he says, the fullness and swellings of the heart. When your emotions become too much for you, you need an outlet. And let me sort of give you a fast forward into the theory of philosophy, into the words of one of the greatest philosophers of all time, and that is Aristotle. Now, Aristotle presented his theory of catharsis, and what he said was in relation to poetry, but the essence of it is that unless human beings have a periodic catharsis or a letting out of the pressures that build up in the heart and in the brain, they will explode. Now, all you young men and women out there are very familiar with the feeling of being overpowered either by the thoughts in your mind or by the emotions in your heart. Because you are young, it's the emotions that are more powerful. Now, these emotions are not of one type. They may be anger, sorrow, happiness, and so many other emotions. Let me take anger, sorrow, and happiness. What happens when you're angry? Do you just speak in a normal tone of voice? Or do you bang the door? Do you hit your fist against the wall? Do you scream and shout? Do you curse, abuse? Or you just smile and say nothing? That's just anger, okay? We've dealt with one emotion. There's a variety of different ways in which you can respond. You can just sit and smile. You can curse and abuse someone. You can take something up and throw it against the wall. You can bang a door. The young ladies out there, you can bang dishes in the kitchen. Any one of these different ways. All right? We'll get back to this later. Let's go on to happiness. What happens when your heart overflows with happiness? Do you just sit like this? Do you smile? Do you laugh? Or what do you do? There has to be a response. You can laugh outright, you can smile, or you can just sit with a serious face, like so. Okay? Now that's the second. What happens when you're sad, when you're sorrowful, when you're grieving? How do you react when you get bad news? Do you just sit like this again? Or do you say, oh God, what am I going to do now? Or do you weep with tears? There has to be one response. Now, to get back to Aristotle's theory of catharsis, those who sit with a straight face, whether they're angry or happy or sad, are those who are keeping their feelings inside. They are not having a catharsis. They're not providing an outlet for their feelings. And such people, according to Aristotle, can harm themselves. When you keep feelings inside yourselves, doctors, contemporary medicine states that you get high blood pressure when you don't give relief, when you don't provide any kind of outlet for your emotions, and you keep your emotions pent up inside. you can have high blood pressure, you can have a nervous breakdown, you can have, God forbid your blood pressure reaches high, really high, you can have a brain hemorrhage. So you actually damage your physical self. It's not a nice thing. It's like a pressure cooker. You all know what a pressure cooker is? You put something inside and you add water to it, and then you wait for that water to boil and cook whatever is inside. Now, if it so happens that the safety valve is clogged, the pressure will build up inside that cooker to such an extent that either the safety valve will blow off or the cooker will not be able to withstand the pressure that has built up inside with the steam. And you have a lot of accidents that take place inside the kitchen because whatever you are cooking does not have space or room to emit steam, to let off the pressure. So coming back to Bacon and aligning Aristotle's ideas with those of Bacon, Aristotle says you must have a catharsis, you must have an outlet for your feelings and emotions. And Bacon says that a friend, a true friend, is the best means to discharge all those pent-up feelings, to have a catharsis, to provide relief for your feelings and emotions. And those of you who have experienced sorrow lately, you will know that once you have a good cry, you weep, you feel better. The same is true when you are angry and you bang doors. There's a special satisfaction that you get when you hear the sound of the door banging. If you throw something in the kitchen, and again I'm talking mostly to the ladies out there, when you throw something in the kitchen, it gives you a sense of satisfaction. You don't achieve anything, but that loud sound that is produced is enough for you. And the same is true of those who, let's say, cannot control their feelings and want to hit out at the person who's saying something nasty, and they actually do hit out. Once you've hit that individual, you're okay. Your anger is gone. Once you weep, your sorrow is decreased. Once you laugh and you smile, your happiness is shared, is doubled. So when Aristotle talks about a catharsis, he's talking about it in the same sense that Bacon uses it. When you discuss something with your friends, whatever it is that is bothering you, it might be something that's making you angry, it might be something that is making you sad, you hear bad news and you go and you tell your friends, and your friend says, "Oh, that's so bad, I feel so sorry for you, oh, you're such a good person." Now when you hear such things from your friends, you feel good. Your emotions have an outlet. You're angry and you go and tell your friend, or you say, "Oh, I want to kill so-and-so, he was so mean, he said these things to me, and I don't want to talk to her again." And your friend says, "Yes, you don't need to talk to him again, but remember, whatever he has said, you need to think about it. Maybe whatever he said you don't like, but it is for your own good. So you get positive counseling, you get positive advice from your friend. So according to Bacon, the principal fruit of friendship is the ease and discharge of the fullness and swellings of the heart, that outpouring that you experience is one of the best things that can happen to you in a friendship. And then he goes on to explain a little more, and he says, we know the disease of stoppings and suffocations. They're the most dangerous in the body. And what he's telling you here is what I've already told you about, and that is the rise in the blood pressure, the building up of emotions inside you is not good for you. So if it is not good for the body, it is also not good for the mind. When the pressure builds up in your mind, you have a lot of thoughts and ideas, you can't give expression to it, you don't have anyone you can share with, you go mad. Now that's a phrase or a term that is not used much now. What is used is, so and so has had a nervous breakdown. Your nerves can stand only so much pressure. All right? So these are the diseases of stoppings. You may take sarsa to open the liver, and now he gives you different remedies for different ailments. And you need to remember that although Bacon was writing in the 16th and 17th centuries, because he was a scientist and he had experimented, because he was a jurist and a courtier, so his knowledge comes from different fields. So he says you may take sarsa to open the liver if you have a liver problem. You take a form of salsa, very hard, to steel to open the spleen. If your spleen is malfunctioning, then you take iron, and that makes the functions of the spleen more regular. Flowers of sulfur for the lungs. If you have a problem breathing, then you take what he calls the flowers of sulfur, and what are actually minute crystals of sulfur which are obtained by condensing sulfur vapor on a cold surface. So they are in the shape of tiny flowers. They're actually crystals, but this crystallized form is known as flowers of sulfur, and they're good for the lungs. Castoreum for the brain. But now what he's given you here is a whole list of ailments and their remedies. But he says no remedy can open the heart but a true friend. I want you to think about this, and you will see how true it is. Nothing can open your heart, nothing can relieve the passions and emotions in your heart but a true friend, to whom you may impart grief, joys, fears, hopes, suspicions, counsels, and whatsoever lieth upon the heart, to oppress it in a kind of civil shrift or confession. That's what a true friend does. Those of you who have true friends are very lucky. Those few who do not, I would consider very unlucky. Francis Bacon would consider very unlucky, because it is only to a friend that you can open up your heart. It's only to a friend that you confess. It's only with a friend that you share secrets, secret joys, secret sorrows, secret passions, secret hatreds. You share everything with a friend, don't you? So it is a strange thing to observe. Now you've got to remember how precious Bacon makes a friend into when we discuss this part. Alright? So a friend, a true friend, is the best thing a man can have, because kings and monarchs rate friendship very highly. So great as they purchase it many times at the hazard of their own safety and greatness. Now this is something that you need to think about. This is what makes you realize how precious friendship is, how dear your friends are, because friendship is something that kings and monarchs always want to have, but it's very difficult to find a true friend, and it's especially difficult for a monarch to have a true friend, because the monarch is ruler of all he surveys. Therefore, you cannot tell whether a person expresses his like for you because he actually likes you, or because of the power that you wield, because of the post that you occupy, because of the position that you enjoy in society. It's very difficult. And so Bacon says, friendship is so valuable. Friendship is the only thing worth having. And that is why kings and monarchs reward the people they call their friends in many different ways. They give them land, they give them positions, they give them money, they give them jewels, whatever they want, because they want friendships. But in the majority of cases, those whom they befriend turn back on them and stab them in the back. You've all read the story or heard the story of Julius Caesar and Brutus. Brutus was supposed to be Caesar's best friend. Contemporary researchers have also tried to prove that Brutus was Caesar's son. Whatever, Brutus was the closest man to Caesar, and he stabbed him in the back. He stabbed him at a point in time when Caesar relied on him absolutely, when Caesar had total trust in him. You have complete faith in your friends. That's what he's talking about here. So great kings and monarchs value friendship, and they're willing to purchase friendship, not knowing whether it is going to be true friendship or not. So princes, in regard of the distance of their fortune from that of their subjects and servants, cannot gather this fruit. Remember, he's talking about the fruit of friendship. Except they raise some persons to be companions and almost equals. So, you raise them to your level, they stab you in the back. You don't have friends, you don't have anyone to advise you. You don't have anyone with whom you can share anything. You don't have anyone who can listen to you. You don't have anyone who can give you good advice, who can tell you, don't do this. This will be bad for you. Do it this way. So those who rule, those who are monarchs, are solitary people. And when they do try to bring people up by purchasing them and bringing them to their own level, in the majority of cases, 99% of the cases, they are harmed by those same people, by those very individuals whom they have raised, whom they have brought up to their level. Modern languages give unto such persons the name of favorites. And this is a term that was very popular in the times of Bacon and in the age that preceded it, in the medieval ages. You had all kings had favorites. Bacon wrote during the time of Queen Elizabeth. He wrote during the time of King James I. Queen Elizabeth had her favorites, but Queen Elizabeth was smart. She never married. She never brought any of her favorites to the status of equality, and as such she remained safe. You had favorites with King James I, and you had different problems during his reign also. So modern languages give unto such persons the name of favorites or privadoes, as if it were a matter of grace or conversation. It doesn't make any difference what you call such an individual. He is always going to cause you harm. Whenever you try to buy friendship, whenever you try to buy loyalty, that individual is going to turn round on you at the first opportunity and stab you in the back. So the Roman name attaineth the true use and cause thereof, naming them participes curarem, for that it is that which tieth the knot. So people who only benefit you as long as you provide them with money and power and position. All right? Let's quickly recap what Bacon has expressed in this essay of friendship. Now, let's see. He explains friendship first, and then he goes on from there, and he describes the different types of friendship. He describes what a true friend is like, and he gives a lot of importance to a true friend, because he says you can have all the other things in life, you can buy everything else, you can buy all kinds of cures for illnesses, but the only thing that will relieve your heart is when you can share your joys, your frustration, your happiness, your sorrow, your anger, irritation with a friend. And Bacon raises the level of a friend and says that a friend is what you want above everything else in this life. And he goes on to express how valuable friendship is, because he says that a friend is one in whom you can confide. A friend is an individual with whom you can share everything. A friend is happy in your joy. A friend sorrows, grieves with you. And when you share your happiness with a friend, your happiness is doubled, your joys are doubled, they're increased. And when you share your sorrows with a friend, they're divided, they're halved. Your friend takes on half the burden. So friendship is very, very valuable. It's so valuable, according to Bacon, that it is the only thing that kings and monarchs try to purchase by giving favors, by giving property, by giving wealth and jewels and positions to human beings, just so that they would share in their frustration, in their happiness and sorrows. But what happens is, human beings, being human beings, do not return a favor with a favor. Invariably, the people whose loyalty and friendship kings and monarchs want to buy are those same people who will stab you in the back the moment your back is turned. These are the people who will cause you greatest harm. People whom you have never shown favors to will not harm you. It's people that you show special favors to, who always turn around and harm you. And that is how Bacon tackles this very interesting subject of friendship. And he says that somehow the English language does not do justice to this relationship of a king trying to buy loyalty by calling such a person a favorite. The Latin term that he uses, privados, he says, is more expressive. You have to remember that Bacon was fluent in the Latin language, and most of the education that he received was in the Latin language. So he had a command over the language which far excelled the command that anyone else at that time had. He was a very learned, a very scholarly man. So his command over the language of Latin can only be equaled with his command over the English language. And with so many essays that we have dealt with, you will be able to see how great a command he has over the English language, how great a command he has over ideas related to different fields. Remember, the examples that he gives you here are all to do with medicine. He tells you what is good for each ailment. If your spleen is malfunctioning, this is what you do. If it's your lungs that are malfunctioning, this is what you take. So he has studied medicine also. There's virtually no field into which Francis Bacon had not dabbled. And his essays are replete with examples from many different fields of life. He talks about history, he talks about philosophy, he talks about literature, he talks about medicine, he talks about the legal side of life, because he was a jurist also, so he could converse with the most learned people of that time on any area. And whatever he learned, whatever he studied, he has put into these essays in a very concise and pithy manner. And this style you start to appreciate as we discuss more and more of his essays. And we'll be doing a couple of more essays before we move on to Charles Lamb and a totally different style of writing. So thank you very much for being so patient with me. And until the next lecture, Allah Hafiz.